Hello and welcome to the Curator of Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll be bringing you some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage on Monocle Radio, with highlights from our studios here at Midori House and from around the world. This week, we sit down with Michael Kliger, CEO of Mytheresa, to discuss his plans for the newly formed Luxexperience.
Yesterday, next to someone, she said, "Oh, I love Net-a-Porter. I only shop on Net-a-Porter." And next to her was someone, "No, it's Mytheresa. This is the only one. This is great. This is exactly what we want to. We want to have people that love the one and then maybe don't like the other."
Plus, we meet a husband and wife duo who took a gamble and planted a vineyard in a region of Wales better known for its sheep farming.
We kind of knew because of our location and altitude that the wines that we make aren't going to be traditional or what people might expect, and so we kind of wanted that message across everything that we do.
All that and much more in the next hour, here on The Curator, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We begin this week's show with a look back at the 10th edition of Monocle's Quality of Life Conference. The event wrapped up in Barcelona last weekend, and to share some of his highlights, Monocle's editor-in-chief, Andrew Tuck, joined Tom Edwards in the studio on Wednesday's edition of The Briefing.
The venues were amazing. The welcome was at the Miro Foundation. This view across the city. Everywhere we went, the food was good. People were in an amazing mood. And then we had a day that just unfolded on stage of discussions and talks that were funny, enlightening, moving. You know, we touched all the emotions. And it ended with most people crying. It's desperate to get out.
No. Andrew, behave yourself. Why was everyone weeping at the end? It was one of the most arresting spectacles I think I've ever seen, not just in a conference setting, but frankly, anywhere. Tell us.
Well, who would imagine me perched on your shoulders would be enough to get that as the prize? No. We, some time ago, did a story in the magazine about Castellers, which is the Catalan tradition of building human towers. And some of these, they're multiple stories high. And even when we edited the story in the magazine, I kept on finding myself caught in the emotion of the photographs, because they're based on trust. So the strongest go at the base, and then you build up more layers until at the very top a child goes. Now, we made a little film about it, which we played at the end. Now, even for some of our staff, they didn't know that we had managed to persuade a very celebrated troupe of Castellers to come to the venue. So as the film finished, it's the end of the day, people were thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get back to the hotel, put my feet up." The back doors open, and then starting coming down the stairs come 70 people, Castellers. And 70 people, it turns out, is a lot of people, because I was on stage and you watch them coming.
It took them a second to get in there.
And then they gathered right in front of us on stage. And even people from Barcelona said, "Look, it's funny, we see it in town squares all the time. We've seen it on big in arenas, but to see it in this intimate space of the Petit Palau, the Palau de la Música Catalana, it was just weirdly arresting." And I think because people had all day been talking about how we come together, look after each other, unite, build better communities. It was, without saying a word, they summed up the whole damn thing in the gesture of building these two human.
It was incredible. And if you look, and what's wonderful about the photographs, which are in the expo, in which issue, Andrew, can you remember? I can't actually remember which.
Oh, putting me on the spot.
Right. Well, no,
it's not Mastermind.
During the summer, I think. But you see these wonderful, because of the people at the bottom of the Castell, when they're sort of closer to the centre, they can't even really see out. So they kind of lie their heads upon one another, and the hands are laid on one another. There is something profoundly intimate about it. And yet it's so expressive. You don't actually need to know the fascinating cultural context to understand its resonance as a piece of human theatre and social sort of cohesion. It was absolutely extraordinary. Can I tell you one of my highlights? This was a conversation you had about architecture, and we had a few great architects. Nick Manish spoke to some super interesting and a real interesting sort of diversity of views and experiences, but there was a wonderful discussion about building architecture for religious expression to build a mosque, and it took some really kind of interesting turns. And it was one of those conversations where I kept coming back to it the next day, the day after. Tell us about that one.
Turkish architect called Emre Aralat, who again I met at another event and we got chatting, and there was something about him. He's I guess he's in his 60s maybe, but he's just thought about things for a long time, and he was commissioned to make a mosque in Turkey on the edge of Istanbul. Now, just scrub all from your mind all impressions of what you think a mosque would look like. This is made from stone. The minaret is more of a kind of a square pillar. It's free almost of all adornment inside it. It takes none of the Ottoman cues. It starts from scratch. So he was amazing at telling the story of the Sankaklar mosque and how it got built. But what he was also good at talking about was how resist starting a creative process if you're always going to start at the same point and always going to go along the same route. How about you pause a little bit and you fight for something that might be a little bit different? So he's all about context, time and place and making something that feels opposite. So it was a great conversation because he was talking about a mosque, but I think he left everyone thinking, okay, maybe I could do something a bit different. And actually, there was a gentleman from the UAE who I spoke to afterwards, and he said to me, he said, extraordinary. He said, I'm a practicing Muslim. He said, I've just never seen a mosque like that, thought about the process, and he had stripped it back to the essence. Because as he explained, in the end, a mosque just needs to be a place that's clean. That's the only thing you need, a clean place, and you can start praying. And he took it right back to the essence.
And do you need to be a religious man to design a wonderful religious building?
No,
he was funny, Emre, about that, wasn't he?
He was funny. He said, look, you don't need to have cancer to design an oncology unit. Why do you have to be incredibly pious to create a mosque or a church? And he's not. He's honest. He's not a huge believer. He's faithful, but he's not. He's not an extremely religious person. But he ended up designing perhaps one of the most beautiful religious spaces you've ever seen.
And that was just the tip of the iceberg of insights and fascination revealed at the Monocle Quality of Life conference. I didn't even get to ask you about your 3-day Andrew Tuck-led after party.
Oh yeah, we took some of our patron readers to Mallorca for a couple of days. It was, in the end, it turned out to be 5 days. Just before I go, did you enjoy it?
It was absolutely sensational. I am going to go out on a limb, Andrew, and say I think it was the best of the 10 editions thus far. What do you reckon?
I think it is. I was saying to people afterwards, I think that maybe we should do a Glastonbury and have a fallow year next year.
I'm up for that.
That was Monocle's editor-in-chief Andrew Tuck speaking to Tom Edwards on Wednesday's edition of The Briefing. Staying with The Briefing now, where on Tuesday Chris Chermak was joined by Monocle's executive producer Carlota Rebelo from the World Design Congress. Considered the Olympics of design, the event took place right here in London, and Carlota began by telling Chris the theme of this year's event.
I am indeed at the World Design Congress, which has returned to London finally after 50 years. It is taking place at the Barbican Centre. It makes only sense that it happens in one of the city's brutalist icons. And for the first time as well, the theme of the event is Design for the Planet. So a big focus on the power that design has in improving the world around us and bettering people's lives. Now, to give you some numbers, because I know you're a fan of stats, Chris. Most attendees ever in this edition of the Congress since it began in 1959. We're talking about 1,200 people in attendance here in person and similar numbers joining the live stream online. 77 countries are represented here with people from all over the world, including from Kenya, quite a big delegation from Kenya here as well. And in total, over today and tomorrow, we'll be hearing from 160 speakers from 22 countries. How's that for numbers?
That is a lot of numbers and a lot of people. What else are they going to be talking about? I mean, you gave this topic, Design for the Planet. Dig down a little bit more for us on what exactly that means. What kind of... I understand you saw some case studies this morning.
Absolutely. So it really is honing in on this idea that we are at a catalytic moment for the global design community. And that's everyone from business makers, policymakers, academics, designers, us, journalists. And it really is this mission to learn and work better on how design can improve our world. This morning, we heard 3 incredible case studies. One of them is about functional design and how a simple change to a stove in Kenya has actually improved the quality of life for many, many people. So we are talking here about a project in rural communities in Kenya where people traditionally cook with open fires that not only provide safety, but then also the fuel that is added to those stoves to cook food has mosquito repellent. So it's actually helping decrease the number of infections, malaria infections. So a really simple example of how by changing functional design, the lives of many have been impacted. Another example was this designer that works with biology and bacteria in design. And this is to create garments from bacteria, but also materials. And they discovered that by using these microbes and applying them to sand, the sand would then turn into stone. So therefore, you're creating stone to build buildings, create lamps, create structures, create tables by simply adding bacteria to it in a very natural process. So those were just some of the case studies that we heard this morning, and really inspiring to, when you think about design, you think that a lot of times it is about innovation, and in the age of technology, how some of these answers actually are about going back to the basics and rethinking how we do things. One of the speakers on stage said this sentence that really stuck with me, and it's this idea of how sometimes the future involves rediscovering old materials through the lens of this new technology. And I think that really has applied to what we've heard so far.
And Carlotta, the way you described there, some of the panels, some of the things being introduced, this is also the Olympics of design, if I understand you correctly, which does mean there are awards. There must be awards. Who's winning?
Yes, there are indeed awards, and we've had one of the big ones this morning, and this is the World Design Medal 2025, which was given to Dieter Rams. Now, many listeners might recognize his work from the Vitsu shelving units or functional design like Braun's very first orange juicer, electric orange juicer, or some incredible radio design. And, you know, Dieter Rams really is a guiding principle for many of the modern designers, because he came up with his 10 principles of design, which revolve around function, beauty, simplicity, and form. And a lot of the practitioners that we follow and admire guide themselves by the principles that Dieter Rams came up with. So it was a real treat to have that here. He, of course, could not be present because of his advanced age, but someone was here representing his that works very closely to the betterment of utilitarian design in our day-to-day lives.
Monocle's executive producer Carlotta Rebelo there in conversation with Chris Chermak earlier this week. Stay in the world of architecture and design now for our next highlight. Healthcare plays an integral role in how we experience cities. The world's oldest psychiatric hospital was founded in the 13th century in London. Now, as well as treating patients, it plays host to a museum that documents the treatment of and attitude towards mental illness over the centuries, as well as staging intriguing art exhibitions. For this week's Tall Stories, Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs reported from the Bethlehem Royal Hospital and Museum of the Mind.
In a London suburb along a peaceful road bordered by houses on one side and a grassy wood on the other is a hospital. In fact, it's an institution with an important history.
Bethlehem Hospital is a working psychiatric hospital, but it also happens to be the hospital with the longest continuous history of mental health care. It's a history that goes back to the foundation of the hospital in 1247. And we've been on 4 separate sites over the course of our history, starting off in the very centre of London, moving progressively outwards, London catching up with us each time. The governors of the hospital were seeking a little bit more by way of green open space, because they thought that all else being equal, if one had to be in residence for the sake of one's mental health, it would be better to be surrounded by trees and flowers and gardens and such like.
And it's not just a hospital that's here, there's a museum too, the Bethlehem Museum of the Mind. That was the voice of its director, Colin Gale. The Museum of the Mind occupies a red brick building on the hospital site. On entering, 2 prostrate figures greet you. Lying down either side of a staircase, one looks pained as he attempts to breach his chains, the other appears doleful. The statues have the nicknames Raving Madness and Melancholy Madness. They represent the 2 ways in which mental illness was understood in the 17th century. They're perhaps not the most welcoming of ushers. Today, I'm here for the opening of a new exhibition entitled Between Sleeping and Waking.
Like all museums, we have more in our store than we can possibly put on display at any one time. And in particular, we have over 1,000 works of art, mostly by former patients and service users of Bethlehem Hospital. This means that we put on temporary exhibitions from time to time alongside our permanent displays. And the exhibition we're opening today is called Between Sleeping and Waking. And what we've done is we've taken the work of sleep researchers who have developed a taxonomy of the most commonly shared dreams that people have. We've then consulted our collections and found a painting to illustrate each of these archetypes, as it were.
The collection Colin speaks of mostly comes from former patients. Before art or occupational therapy, the hospital would often enable their artistic patients to continue their creative practice while they were here.
So the collection is quite varied in nature. Some of it might go under the category of outsider art, I suppose, if you think about work produced by people who have not been part of the art establishment, but perhaps have begun their creative practice while in hospital, perhaps as a therapy. But there'll be lots of other works in our collection which actually they've been done by trained artists who maybe were artists before they became unwell and just continued that creative practice because it was so much bound up with their identity and their sense of self and purpose. Just from an art critical point of view, there's work within our collection which, from that point of view, does stand up in terms of its quality. And in other cases, the quality is in the powers of observation or the obvious resilience that people have shown in the face of very unfavourable circumstances.
Those works are on show for the patients and staff who populate the hospital, but also for the public to come and see. Through them and historical displays, the museum tells the story of the hospital. And while this is a tale of health and healing, it's also the story of a city.
The history of Bethlehem Hospital is tied closely with the history of London, and there is light and shade in that history. Clearly, the hospital's nickname that we can never really shake, in fact, the word Bedlam was given to the English language because of the existence of this hospital. It's just a different way of spelling the name of this hospital, and it wouldn't be there were it not for that. So I suppose that tells you that the hospital's PR over the centuries has had something to be desired. But actually what it really tells you is that over the course of centuries, because the hospital's been around for so long, almost anything that's happened, for good or ill, in mental health care terms, has some form of reflection here at Bethlehem.
That light and shade can be disturbing. For centuries, the hospital encouraged people to visit even if they didn't have a direct link to a patient. Donations were exchanged for the opportunity to gawk at the people here and their suffering. Of course, before the NHS, the hospital relied on these donations to keep going, but inadvertently created a twisted tourist attraction until the practice was stopped in 1770.
And of course, over the centuries, there has been reform and change, and there's been ebbs and flows as well. The use of restraint, straitjackets, chains, etc., very dramatically expressed in one of the statues on show in the museum, so-called Raving Madness. But those forms of restraint were done away with in Bethlehem in the 1850s, but the memory that they were there still retained. And we cannot say today that restraint is no longer a feature of mental health care, because after all, there is a Mental Health Act which outlines circumstances in which someone may have to accept psychiatric treatment without regard to their wishes in the matter. So this is an example of an issue that has a history to it, but there's a contemporary iteration, and as a society kind of need to continue to think, how do we want to move forward with this?
And so the Raving Madness statue bids me goodbye as I leave Bethlehem Museum of the Mind, a fascinating place to reflect on the history of mental illness in this city. But more importantly, as Colin says, it's somewhere to ponder its future.
Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs there, and still to come here on The Curator, we sit down with the CEO of Mytheresa, Michael Kliger. We meet Simon Kin, the modern-day meat maestro responsible for the only Korean steakhouse to earn a Michelin star. And we explore a vineyard in a region of Wales better known for its sheep farming. Stay tuned.
We're proud to support the craft of journalism. UBS brings you the latest news from around the world. Be part of an international network that brings together leading insights, research, and technology across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the center of it all. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Isn't it good when things just click? Monocle.com's new look website is live now and brimming with new features, fresh daily opinion, and more. Head to our revamped website to access our online shop, subscribe, or log into our eagerly awaited new selection of city guides. To stay ahead, spot opportunities on the horizon, and gain a global perspective, head to Monocle.com today.
You are with The Curator, our weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Simon Kin is the founder and CEO of Gracious Hospitality. The Korean-American restaurateur sought to shake up the traditional American steakhouse when he opened Côte in 2017. The New York original, plus outposts in Miami and Singapore, are the first and only Korean steakhouses to earn a Michelin star. Monocle's Gregory Scruggs caught up with this modern-day meat maestro and began by asking him what he loves about steakhouses.
So American steakhouse, I love it. It's a real place of decadence, you know. They double down. What it is you get USDA prime beef, which is top 5% of American beef cattle, which is really, and it's solely graded based on the amount of marbling. So it's really well marbled, rich meat. And then they double down with cream of spinach, which is rich, and mashed potato, which is rich. So what you have is a true fat cat experience, if you will. A Korean steakhouse is a little different. You know, we procure the best beef. You know, we get USDA prime beef, we dry age in our house, and we get American beef, American Wagyu, which is crossbred between Japanese Wagyu and American Black Angus, which is also rich. And then we also get Japanese A5 Wagyu directly shipped from Japan as well. So we get this really well-marbled beef, and we serve that with leaf. So it's beef and leaf experience. So it's pickled vegetables that's cold, that's refreshing, that's crunchy. So it's almost like the yang, which is a Korean word for yin and the yang, right? So you get something really decadent, pair that with something that is really refreshing and light. And what you have is a pretty well-balanced dinner.
How was this concept first received, especially given a reputation in Western culture for Asian food as a more economical, sort of cheap eats type of option?
Yeah, when we first opened, people didn't know what to expect. And it was a fancy setting with a big wine list. So people were confused, but people caught on pretty quickly. And what's really ironic is people who didn't catch on quickly were Koreans. Korean Americans had a lot stronger perceived notion what Korean barbecue restaurants should be. And they wanted something very specific. Whereas the New Yorkers, they were like, oh, wow, this is cool. And I think they really accepted it. When we first opened Côte, you know, Asian food had a preconceived notion. You know, there were no really fancy Korean barbecue available, right? You went to Korean barbecue because it was a casual and fun endeavor.
not because it was refined and over, or refined experience. So in the beginning, people didn't know what to expect, but ultimately they caught on very quickly.
When you earned the Michelin star, was that a watershed moment for a certain kind of fine dining take on Asian cuisine in at least certain food cities around the world? I mean, was that somehow a sign that you've transcended those perceptions around Asian food in Western cities as, again, a more economical option?
Absolutely, Gregory. I think Michelin Guide is definitely the holy grail of our today's restaurant world, right? So in USA, there's 5 steakhouses with the Michelin star, and 2 of them is Goat New York and Goat Miami, right? So I feel like that was a giant triumph and gave steakhouse or Asian way of presenting the highest priced food item, which is, the fine beef. They showed the potential. And I think once our industry sees potential, there are many ways to get there, right? So I think it kind of showed what you can be, right? How our Asian food can be interpreted as or received as. And I think that I'm very proud that it opened a lot of possibilities.
Korean fried chicken has taken the world by storm, and you have your own take on it. How do you approach the famous KFC?
First, I named it Gokodak. COQ in French means chicken. Tak, DAQ in Korean means chicken. So Gokodak is, and then I put the Korean character for tak in the middle of that O. So it's chicken, chicken, chicken. But it also is a sound that chicken makes. Gokodak, kokoko, So the mission of Gokodak was to create the cathedral of fried chicken. We wanted to elevate fried chicken. Fried chicken is one of the items, along with a hamburger and pizza, I think is the 3 trifecta of American food, if you will. So our mission was to really kind of take that, something that everybody loves, and evolve it and make a better version of it. And when I say better, it's better chicken. We found this farm in Pennsylvania that grows chicken in a regenerative agriculture way, pasture raised, no antibiotics, no hormones, certified humane. So it's a small farm. So we procure better chicken, and we made a batter that's naturally gluten-free. So it's a gluten-free batter. And we found this really unique oil called cultured oil. So it's a certified non-deforestation, a non-GMO, sugarcane growing wild in Brazil. And they ferment it, and they create this oil that doesn't have the negative qualities of a seed oil. And compared to seed oil, on average, it takes about 10% only of the environmental footprint. So we use better oil. So together we create really amazing fried chicken experience, but it's not complete. The fried chicken experience is not complete unless you pair that with the largest champagne list in America. We have about 450 labels of champagnes, and of course, you can't eat chicken nuggets without topping that with Petrosian caviar. I'm just kidding. Chicken nuggets are great without, but that's one of our biggest sellers.
So that's quite a juxtaposition of high and low, if you will, of food of the people and luxury goods, at least luxury food and drink. What do you derive out of pairing such extremes under the same restaurant roof on the same table?
Yeah, Gregory, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's literally chicken nugget, I think is the lowest of the brows of a food, right? And the Petrosian Tsar Duranki caviar is probably at the highest brow of food totem pole, if you will. And by putting that together, it creates a lot of fun. It creates a lot of big dynamic environment. And it's definitely, one chicken nugget is $26. So it's very, very expensive. But, when I create this experience of lowbrow, highbrow, because you can definitely get chicken nuggets without the caviar. So when you're going to Gokodak on any given night, my favorite part is there's a billionaire sitting next to NYU students, and both of them are having the best time of their lives.
Simon Kin, founder and CEO of Gracious Hospitality, speaking to Monocle's Gregory Scruggs for this week's installment of The Entrepreneurs. Staying on the theme of food and drink now as we turn to a highlight from the latest episode of Confit Corner. Wynyard Rocks sits on the edge of Radnor Forest in East Wales, a unique location for a natural winemaking venture. Susan and James Kinsey-Jones took a gamble and planted a vineyard in a region of Wales better known for sheep farming, starting not only a business, but also a new way of life. Confect's Emily Wade headed out to the Welsh hills to meet the couple and chat about all things natural wine and the highs and lows of owning a vineyard in the UK.
The leaves are heavy with raindrops from a spring shower, and the distinctive earthy smell of petrichor floods the air as I arrive at Wynyard Rocks on the edge of Radnor Forest in East Wales. The sun is peeking through the clouds, illuminating the emerald hillsides that this part of the world is known for. Susan Kinsey-Jones, who co-founded the vineyard with her husband James, comes to greet me. James joins us once he's fixed a vital piece of farm machinery. We nestle in one of the farm barns to shelter from the wind rushing across the fields.
I think we got to a point in our careers where we weren't that into them, let's say, and I'd always kind of had an inkling about coming back here, but not to be a sheep farmer. And at the time, I think whenever we went on holiday, it was to somewhere where there was a wine region or vineyards, and we got sort of this holiday lets as part of what my parents had set up here like before. So we thought maybe we could do a vineyard on the farm and sort of integrate the holiday business in it. So that was sort of like an idea back in probably 2015, 2016. That's I guess that was the sort of genesis of it. It was just sort of decided to make a change and move back this way. So.
Yeah, I think we wanted to do something that we'd both have an interest in. I mean, obviously we like travel and food and drink, and then kind of meeting interesting people that was quite inspiring and seeing how they're making like niche food products and agriculture and sustainability. And then when you kind of suggested it kind of came out of the blue, but then it's just like, yeah, why not, as in we'll try small patch. Yeah, exactly, why not?
In the background, the bleating of sheep is just about audible over the gusts of wind. All grapes grown at Wynyard Rocks are low intervention, meaning that no pesticides or artificial fertilisers are used and no sulphates are added to the wines later. Susan talks about the styles of wine they have on the farm and how many vines they are currently growing.
So we've got 4 styles of wine coming from 800 vines that we planted in 2017, and now we've got 5,600 vines and 9 different varieties of grape. And we kind of planted lots of different varieties to kind of give us diversity in what we could produce, and also some sort of resilience in the grape growing, so that it can, depending on the weather and the season, like different varieties can have different outcomes, I guess. Yeah. We probably make quite a lot of different wines for the size of our production at the moment, but it seems to be going quite well. We make a traditional method sparkling.
I was thinking about the reds and how you would go about that, especially in this particular area with the soil and the climate that you have.
So in terms of the vineyard, like the soils are great. They've got really soils are like really good. Like our agronomist came and like sniffed our soil and he's like, "Oh, that's good stuff."
Did he?
So he got on this now. So our soil's all right. So which is good. Which is, and you can go into technical detail, but it's kind of like a silty loam soil, which will mean nothing unless you're into soil, but it means it's quite free draining. So that's good. So that's a big tick there for us. So we're trying to be a little bit smart in what we plant. So that's fine. And then we're actually we do say we're on because we're out on the east of Wales and there's a lot of mountains between us and the weather. We still get lots of rain, don't get me wrong.
In 2020, the couple renovated a quaint cottage that has been in James's family since 1913. Located down a private lane beside their first vineyard, Highbrick Cottage offers a trademark holiday experience tucked away in rural Wales. A couple of wooden cabins overlooking the vineyard are next on their list of ways to expand. As we meandered back through the vines and finished at the farm barn, I asked Susan and James what the future holds for Wynyard Rocks.
I feel like English Welsh wine's just kind of blown up quite recently. Not that long ago, 10 years or so, probably being very like, unless you made a traditional method wine and unless you were based in the southeast, you'd pretty much be laughed out the door. You probably wouldn't take them very seriously. I do think it's really shifted in that short space of time for like trade and journalists being more really interested in all the diversity of what's being made across the country now, which is great for someone like us, because we were never gonna have Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier grapes to make like a classic traditional methods. That was just never going to happen for us.
I think for expansion for us is probably going to be more focused around getting people here, and like because we've got a holiday let. Well, there's another holiday let on the farm, and we've got planning in to put cabins in the vineyard as well. So we really want to get people here. It kind of is beautiful around here, the mountains, all the rest of it. So once we hit a certain level of, I think the vineyard is going to be like the core of everything that we do, but we kind of want to sort of bring in other elements of enterprises into it and sort of and help it grow that way.
For Confect, on the edge of Radnor Forest, I'm Emily Wade.
A report there by Emily Wade at Vineyard Rocks for the latest installment of Confit Corner. You are listening to The Curator, a weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio. Next, we look back to my show The Stack, where last weekend I spoke with the fashion journalist Lauren Sherman of Puck, the media company where you find out the inside news from Wall Street, Washington and Hollywood. Lauren's great at looking at the state of fashion in print, and she told me more about her job, Puck, and what she thinks of the new head of editorial for US Vogue, Chloe Mal.
I think there are two things. One is that Vogue is arguably the biggest fashion brand in the world. I always say it's Chanel and Vogue. They, in terms of people knowing what it is, people having a feeling, affinity towards it, people interacting with it, everyone knows about Vogue. And so, and credit to Anna Wintour for making it a global brand in some ways. I think the challenge is that there are many types of gatekeepers today, and there is also direct access to brands. So the authority part is harder to define. And I often refer to American GQ, run by global head of editorial content, Will Welch, as a good example of what a modern mass magazine can be. Look, the circulation rate, who cares? Newsstand sales, who cares? These used to be the things that they measured against. But what Will did when he came into GQ, American GQ was sort of an everyman's magazine. It was, how do American men want to dress? And we also do good journalism. Esquire, similar, and I think Esquire has also, under Michael Sebastian, done a similarly good job of creating what it needs to be, which is a niche. Like, we live in a world of a mass of niches. Like, what Will did when he came into GQ was he decided, I'm not going to do investigative reports anymore. Maybe occasionally, this is going to be a magazine for fashion enthusiasts, and we're going to just go hard on that. And everything he does, from the events to which, have been very, very successful. He has this fashion show at the Super Bowl. They do a creativity awards. All of the events have been really successful. And the magazine itself, the people there, there's a cult around the magazine. It is never going to be the everyman's magazine anymore because there's no longer an everyman. And I think Esquire, what Michael has done is, obviously they still have fashion pages and they have a really amazing longtime fashion director, creative director, but he's really focused on the journalism, and they've won ASMEs and a Pulitzer Prize. I think it was Esquire's first Pulitzer Prize. So he decided, this is what I'm good at, and we're going to focus. And I think what Chloe needs to do is, she's a very funny person. If you ask anyone, what would you say about Chloe Mal, you would say she has a great sense of humor. I think it'll be interesting to me to see how a writer, she's an editor, but the reality of it is that she's truly a writer and a journalist. So let's see what she does, what kind of visuals people she brings on, what kind of sort of vision she has for it. But she said in the New York Times that she wants the magazine in some ways to be smaller. And I actually think that that is the right way to think about it. It's about focus in this market. And so I do think there is an opportunity. The challenge for Condé Nast is to balance making something feel specific that can be sold universally. So the Vogue business could be much bigger than it is. They need to figure out how to scale it, given the awareness and the understanding of the brand globally.
I think the brands, especially in print, they need to feel special as well. And I think that's what's missing. But for example, changing the title to Vanity Fair, let's say, they have also a new editor. I'm kind of having hopes the Vanity Fair kind of comes back, perhaps with a little bit more glamour of the old age. I wonder, what's your take on that?
I 100% agree. I think, as I wrote in my column on Chloe, that Mark Guiducci, the editor of Vanity Fair, and Chloe Mall, the new editor of Vogue, have, when you look at them, it's sort of a similar background. They both worked for Anna for a long time. They come from great privilege. They were sort of waiting in the wings for this job, and they got it. But Mark's remit is so different from Chloe's. Chloe needs to sort of manage the relationships and make sure people are still excited about Vogue. Mark needs to bring people who deserted Vanity Fair back. And so I'm really excited for his Vanity Fair. I think he really wanted the job. He's wanted it since he was, I think, in college. That was his dream job. And he is determined to do something interesting with it. So let's see what the product looks like. But I think generally people are just excited to... The challenge with Vanity Fair in the last few years is not that there wasn't a lot of good work happening there. It was that they weren't a part of the conversation anymore. And it seemed as though they had chosen to not be in the conversation. And I think Mark's goal is to be in the conversation. So whether or not he can execute remains to be seen. But I think there's a lot of goodwill and also excitement around what he's trying to do. There was reports a few weeks back, my colleague Dylan Byers touched on this too, that he is interested in having Melania Trump on the cover. Look, is that going to actually happen? I have no idea. But the fact that he is even saying that to people is provocative. And so I think we are all looking for something a little provocative at this moment.
The fashion journalist Lauren Sherman there speaking to me for last weekend's episode of The Stack. And finally, on today's show, we have a highlight from the latest edition of Monocle Fashion. Natalie Theodosi sat down with Michael Kliger, CEO of Mytheresa, to discuss his plans for the newly formed Luxexperience, the luxury retail group which includes Mytheresa, Net-a-Porter, Mr. Porter, and the Outnet within its portfolio. Here is a highlight.
I think the job is very much clear. There is a back of house and a front of house job. Okay. The back of house is very much something where we need to be more efficient, more effective. We need to leverage what Mytheresa already has in IT and operations. And this is really where integration is happening. Bring together responsibilities, use best practices across. This is also something that you can easier control, that you can really build. And this is progressing and has started. So we are already in process. And obviously there is jobs to be done because there were some not so smart decisions in the past. Doesn't matter, we will fix this. And then this is something that will happen and take effect the next 12, 18 months.
Okay. So relatively quick.
Relatively
process,
quick.
Yeah.
The other part is we need to bring back the allure, the desirability, the excitement in terms of assortment, service, and marketing. And also bring back some high quality people. And I'm very happy because we were able to quickly fill key roles at Net-a-Porter, at Mr. Porter, at Yoox, of bringing back Claudia Plant, Jeremy Langmead. I'm really pleased to have Brigitte Chatron as a new chief buying officer for Net-a-Porter. So we have all the right people in place, but this takes longer. We start now, we can start influencing the spring-summer 26 buy. So already it takes 12 months. Changing brand, making better content, improving service. This is 2 years for sure.
Yeah.
And that's another task. But I already can see the new team has been in the market already talking to brands, and there's a big happiness and a big willingness to support this.
Yeah.
To support the bringing back some of the magic that Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter, and also Yux. I mean, Yux was a very cool company. They had amazing parties. There was, and I believe this is what the secret sauce of Yux has always been. Okay, you may not have the budget, but you can really express yourself with this eclectic selection of a piece there, a piece there. It's a digital Brera flea market, but people are very fond of this also. There's a big love for this Yux idea about having access to luxury for everyone.
That's so interesting because I think, of course, Net-a-Porter, Mr. Porter, people can see the potential and, like you said, bringing back the magic. But it's interesting that you also see potential in Yux. And
Definitely. Because I think there is a lot of off-price out there, but Yux was always more than off-price from the beginning. Yux had an art angle. No one has done that. Yux has a mixture of off-price of big brands, but also first price of small brands. It's a pretty unique thing. Also, a lot of work needed. But this is why I'm also so excited about Yux, because it is something that no one else has tried. There's a lot of off-price, but that's very simple. Okay, you get this amazing brand now at -70. Clearly there's a market for this, but I'm always more fascinated if there is also an emotional element in it.
That's interesting. And another big question when it comes to the merger is how will the brands, especially I guess Net-a-Porter, Mytheresa, Mr. Porter, Mytheresa Men, how will they differentiate? Is there too much crossover, or do you see that there are areas where you can share resources, but then also keep them quite separate in terms of branding or strategy, or what's going to differentiate them essentially?
Number one, there is the clear strategy to keep them and maintain them separate. So this is really what we want to have, as little crossover as possible. That's why we are hiring separated marketing teams, separated buying teams, separated content teams, even for Mr. Porter, separated from, so different people looking after this. The good news is today, people that buy on these platforms, there is less than 10% overlap. So already it is a separate personality. And it's, I said yesterday next to someone, she said, "Oh, I love Net-a-Porter. I only shop on Net-a-Porter." And next to her was someone, "No, it's Mytheresa. This is the only one. This is great. This is exactly what we want. We want to have people that love the one and then maybe don't like the other." And so there is a logic of course, Net-a-Porter will always have a bigger portfolio of brands. At Mytheresa, the logic is you have your favorite established brands, but you find new things in the brands. So you love the Row, you love Prada, you love Brunello, and we will bring exclusives. We will bring capsules from Deutsche, from exclusive products you can't find anywhere else. The logic of Net-a-Porter is much more, show me brands I haven't seen. Bring me new brands, luxury, not contemporary, but we have now this new cool and very luxurious footwear from Italy, or we have this new cool, very luxurious brand from the US. The customer of Net-a-Porter wants actually more discovery on brand side. Bring me new brands, whereas the Mytheresa said, no, I like my brands. I have my favorites, but show me more because I already buy so much, so I need new styles. And also on Net-a-Porter, there is more an appetite for content, for editorial content. That's the magazine heritage of Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter, and we will strengthen that again. Mytheresa was always light on editorial content. Beautiful campaigns to promote products, absolutely. Beautiful videos to promote, absolutely, but not introducing a new designer, sharing his vision, his story. It's not us. And that's perfect. It needs to stay separate. Of course, full price. Of course, luxury. Of course, really engaging with clients. Same logic, same principles.
That was the CEO of Mytheresa, Michael Kliger, speaking to Monocle's fashion editor, Natalie Theodosi. And that's all I've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by San Impi and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week, and thank you for listening.